Hey, kia ora koutou. Get it out. Get it out, you fucker. Get it out.
What's wrong? I'm supporting the winning side now.
You should
have
cut it so you can move his mouth and you'll be able to do stuff. Get it out. You know that makes people angry. You've done this once before. Get it out. Numbers have just halved.
Freedom of speech.
Live viewers are just halved and halved again. Kia ora whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News.
Get out of it, David.
Hey, man.
Nobody likes you.
How you doing, Chewy?
I've had better weekends, Pat. I've had better weekends.
I was like, I had this thing about people in green shirts, and on Saturday, I wanted people in green shirts to win, and they didn't. And on Sunday, I wanted people in green shirts to lose, and they did. So I'm going 50-50 for a 12-hour period. Of course, for the whole year, that makes a very big difference. And of course, you won't know this, Tree, but I'm talking about the All Blacks beating Ireland on Sunday morning. But yes, so yes, it's been a very interesting time, and we are here to talk to you guys about everything. It did feel quite weird actually through the weekend. It felt like we'd got to the end of this show. It's like, oh, we're finished. We're aiming for the election. We're done. But I don't think we're done. And we've got lots more to talk about, and we've got lots to tell you about. And we're going to keep on going, and we want to keep on seeing you each night here in BHN Live 4 nights a week at 9 p.m. And let me just say straight away, we have decided over the weekend, I had a couple of thoughts about some new merch, and then I saw a couple of tweets going out and me tagged in a couple of tweets, and I just thought, sure, I'd already kind of thought about this idea. It had bounced around. Other people are now asking for it, so we have a new merch drop. And it's only going to be on for 3 weeks. And it is t-shirts and hoodies that have the word bottom feeder on them. And you can get it in tan, or you can get it in rust, or you can get it in black. And we are opening up the store again. Now, some beautiful person ordered a BHN hoodie like a week ago, and I refunded them because we didn't have a headspace to do it. So we've reopened the store, give you a chance to get some stuff. So you can get them. They're there. They'll be there for 3 weeks. And of course, they're referencing that beautiful comment by Mr. Luxon, who said, if you want to have a go and you want to make something of yourself, we don't just do bottom feeding and focus on the bottom. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you are like me, a bottom feeder, or you want to support a bottom feeder, I'm not a vulnerable bottom feeder, but I'd be a bottom feeder. There are other who are very vulnerable who Luxon would consider bottom feeders. Then you can get on, you can get a hoodie, or you can get a t-shirt, and we will get them sent out to you. We'll get them printed every Friday, as per usual. We'll order them every Friday, get them printed every Monday, and we'll get them out to you the following week. And there are rust. This color is rust. There are tan. I know this looks yellow, but this is the color that came out, and there are black. So they've also got pictures on the actual site that are the real t-shirts. So that's the tan color there, the actual color of the t-shirt, and that's the other one's the actual rust one as well. So if you want to check out the colors, that's the actual rust, and that's actually from the Cloak website. We use Cloak gear, so you can look for it yourself. There you go. That's the tan color, that's the rust color, and those are the hoodies. Are you a bottom feeder? Would you like to support the podcast and also get yourself some merch displaying across your chest your support for the bottom of the feeding of the bottom? Anyway, you know what I mean. Then you can go in there and
don't like either of those.
I don't like either of those either. It sounds like something strange.
You've done a mischief.
bhnshop.nz, and as I said, every Friday we'll make a new order for the next 3 weeks, and then they'll go away forever. You guys know how this works. So we're back, and look, we had, oh gosh, I think we did a great broadcast on Saturday night. It was a good broadcast. We had a bit of fun doing it and stuff. It wasn't the result that I think most people watching this wanted, although, we got some communication from some ACT voters and stuff on the night who seemed to be enjoying our broadcast as well. So welcome one, welcome all. This is what we do. And we thought we'd spend a bit of time looking over tonight and getting some commentary from people tonight on Saturday night, what it means, where to from here, what went right, what went wrong. Did anything go right? More from our perspective, maybe not. And then, we've got a couple of stories from tonight, and then we're going to move on with the with the rest of our lives, if that is indeed what we can possibly do. So there you go, bhnshop.nz. Get out, what does it say? Got to get out there and happen to our bottoms. Got to get out there and happen to our
Sounds
bottoms.
like a code.
All right, very good. But we were interested in having a catch up with Martyn Bomber Bradbury on Saturday night. It didn't really come together. I believe there was a whiskey bottle or something, and crawling to the bottom of might have been a part of it. I'm not entirely sure, so let's find out from the man himself. Bomber, good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Comrades, kia ora, how are you all?
Good, good. Was it a whiskey bottle? What was it?
It was a huge bong. It was a massive, massive bong. So less whiskey, more bong. No, it was my wake turned into a weekend bender, of which I've only crawled out of the grief cave now. The result is a lot worse than looks a lot worse than it is. When the specials come in, you're talking there'll be over 20% of the total vote. That will bump Labour up. We know how the specials usually go in terms of demographics. It'll give the Greens something, it'll give the Māori Party something, and it'll give Labour. It'll take from National, it'll take from New Zealand First. What you'll end up with, the most likely outcome, this isn't gospel fact, but the most likely outcome will be New Zealand National and ACT relying on New Zealand First. They'll need to have all three of them to try and form a government, and it's already becoming quite apparent how difficult that process is going to be.
But also, Marty, in your opinion, better for New Zealand with New Zealand First in or out? Like, will they cause enough? Will they be a handbrake, for example, on the foreign buyers tax that will maybe not inflate the market, or will they cause so much chaos? And I don't think any of us believe that what Winston says pre-election is what he's going to do, like the penis patrol and Winston's winky wankers going and checking everybody's genitals at the. I don't think anyone thinks he's going to do that. It was to get him elected. So what he's going to do and what he's going to be involved with versus what he's not. Better to have him in as a handbrake if he is. I'm not putting that there as a positive, or better to have him out altogether. What do you think?
And that's a great question, because it's the one that everyone's trying to focus on right now. And the problem is National have built their entire economic model on a house of cards using the foreign buyers revenue base, right? Now, Winston is diametrically opposed to lifting the foreign buyers ban. I mean, it would be like the Greens voting for nuclear power, right?
Yeah.
It's never, ever going to happen. But because the donors behind National, the real estate pimps, have pumped so much money, and this is the result they want, everything's dependent on getting this through. And because Winston will just go, no way are you getting that, there will be, I think, an enormous pressure from within ACT and National to say, screw it. We go to the public and say, Winston won't negotiate for the betterment of New Zealand. We have no other choice. We'll have to go to a second election.
Wow. How, because like we're listening to May Chen from last week, constitutional lawyer, and basically she was like, never happened before, won't happen now. Are you thinking it's a significant possibility?
I think that National are so dependent on this bloody lifting the foreign buyers ban, just so dependent on it, that if they don't have it, they can't do their tax cuts. That they can't fund any of the things that they want to do. And their entire economic plan falls over. So they have to get this foreign buyers ban through. Winston won't do that at all. And I think what they will end up doing, ACT and National, if they can't get this, is they'll say, well, we can't form a government. You give Chris Hipkins a call. And Winston will have to go across to Chris Hipkins and see if they can talk about something there. But, Chippy's already ruled him out. So how that plays out, everything is going to rest on the foreign buyers ban. Nothing else matters. That's the only thing. And whether or not Winston would sell that off for baubles, I just don't think he could. I don't think he realistically could.
What do you reckon, Chewy?
So if that linchpin gets taken out, which,
Yep.
I mean, we've all been saying right from the get-go, doesn't work, math doesn't stack up, it's wishy thinking.
Right.
Then that comes back to the real crux of the thing of laying off a whole bunch of people to get the $20 a fortnight that we've all been promised.
Right.
So it's going to be a bloodbath. But then that brings Winston back in again. I wouldn't exactly call Winston a small government guy. You know,
Well, if you look, no, well, exactly. He's not a small government guy. His entire economic philosophy and platform is the strong state that's protective of its own interests. He is not about small government cutbacks. Then he's not about slash and burn stuff either. So the problem they've got, and the problem they've been delivered by what wasn't an election, but was really a grudge fuck by voters. The result has been something that's actually unworkable. It's actually unworkable.
That seems to me, Martyn, to be maybe better for New Zealand with Winston being there, though. You haven't said that, but if we all agree that the foreign buyers ban and the raping and pillaging of the public sector would be a bad thing, if Winston's involvement means that could stop, should that be the case, that would mean better for him to be there than not.
Oh, look. I mean, yay for throwing Winston into the mix, but the only outcome that I think could be that National Act would seriously consider if he blocked the foreign buyers ban, the only is to go back for a second election.
Do you think the foreign buyers ban, anyone else likely to go with it? Te Pāti Māori?
Well, I mean, Māori Party certainly won't. Labour certainly won't. Greens certainly won't. So there's nowhere for them to go to be able to pick up those extra votes to get it across the line. And if they can't deliver that, then they can't deliver any of their agenda, and that means from the go-get, Luxon is a lame duck prime minister.
Yeah. Then the other thing that does come, and you've kind of already referenced this, is, you know, we have all heard the saying Winston first before. You know, we all know that I won't take the baubles of office, he'll take the baubles of office. How much is he prepared to hypocritically go against his pre-election past 10-year kind of pleas for his own self-interest? And that's what he'd be doing, because you think his constituency in general has been elderly people who don't like foreigners. Now there's the anti-vaxxers, anti-mandates, and the elderly people who don't like foreigners. So if he now goes, well, let's let the foreigners in, there's a part of his base already gone. But then again, how old is he? 78 or something? He's going to be 78. This is probably his last run at it. Does he really care? He just wants that knighthood and then he's off and out of here.
Well, I mean, absolutely, he wants that knighthood, and he's going to get it. But he could demand all those things right now without having to budge 1 inch on the foreign buyers ban. He could demand a knighthood, the ambassadorship, and get some treasury, some cushy rock. He'll get the lot. He loves it, and he's good at it. Good for him. But he isn't going. So he can get all those things right now. What would they have to offer him to lift the foreign buyers ban? Well, maybe make him the first president of New Zealand. But barring that, I don't think they've got a shit show.
Yeah. I don't know. I brought up this article on the Herald that came out this evening. I just want to read to you. We want to show a bit later on how what they promised before the election, the first weekday after the election, how they start walking it back almost immediately. David Seymour has started walking back the 15,000 already. It's Monday. He's already started his first interview on television. He started walking it back. We'll show you that shortly. But if we believe what they said before the election, this is what gets axed under there's a bit of a Freudian slip there, gets axed under a national-led government. Free prescriptions, fair pay agreements, government relationships, whatever that means, with gangs, benefit index to wages, gang patches and gang gatherings in public places. Can't do it, never happened. No cause eviction ban. So they're going to bring that back. Auckland Light Rail. Let's get moving Wellington. 3 warders. The Māori Health Authority, and the most ironic thing about that is Luxon keeps talking about, well, we want to give, authority to Māoris in their local area. So you mean the Māori Health Authority? No. No, we want to give, money to Māori for their health. You mean the Māori Health Authority? No. Because if the Māori Health Authority was an Otago one, that'd be ka pai. If the Māori Health Authority was a nationwide one, we definitely don't want that. That's the worst of all evil. What about this one? I hadn't heard of this, and how ridiculous is this? The Health Star rating for food is going to go. The RMA reforms, the clean car discount, the Auckland Regional Fuel Tax, the sausage law flat tax, sausage flat tax, which is about urban building. Cell phones in schools, Te Pukenga Polytech merger, funding for cultural report, so you're no longer going to see anything about a kid who's been grown up in an abusive household. Remove the Reserve Bank's dual mandate, speed limit restrictions, public transport discounts are going to go. There's a starter for 10. We've always said this. The left do policy and the right respond to policy. And the response from the right to policy is nah. Any thoughts, boys?
Well, they've already spoken about the clean car discount today, that it's gone by December 31st. And one of the things that I saw is what happened to EV sales in Germany when the same thing happened. And sales of those new vehicles plummeted.
Of course.
Anecdotally, in the EV groups that I'm in, I'm already seeing people contacting dealers for cars that they've ordered that won't make it before the end of December, and they're cancelling.
So you mean like the new Tesla Model 3 is not due till next year? If people have put a deposit down now, if it gets delivered into next year, they won't be applicable for that discount. Is that what you're saying?
No, because they don't get the VIN number until the car's in transit. So it doesn't matter if you've pre-ordered it or whatever. You've got to hit the VIN number to register it for the rebate. And if it's not coming through before then, if people's deliveries change, well, dealers are already saying, you might want to cancel your order. We'll refund it if we have to. That sort of thing. So that's already having an effect, and it's short-term thinking. They kept on going that we're getting rid of it because it's not revenue neutral like it was promised. Yet last month it made $2 million. It's the first time it's happened, but it's showing the trend. And they still have to stick to these things if they're going to hit the climate targets that they have already agreed to.
So that means it's like a business who loses money for the first 2, 3, 4 years, and then it starts to slowly get into profit, and then it takes off. It's starting to get into profit now, the thing. Right, Gotcha. Wow.
It's working. Like, there's been a massive uptick in EVs. They've been bought new. They'll filter through to the second-hand market, which was the entire idea of the policy. And it's for people saying, oh, well, we can't buy utes anymore. The Ford Ranger was still the number one selling car this year, which drives me fucking mental. So yeah, it's culture war. It's stoking that urban versus rural divide, that hardworking Kiwi who can't afford an EV can afford a $75,000 Ford Raptor. He's just a hardworking tradie, and there's nothing out there for him. Don't worry about the electric utes that are there, or the electric panel vans. It's not the solution for all people, but it can be a solution for a lot of people if you use the tools you're given to get it to happen. That's an issue that I follow quite closely. But I think it's a sign that they are going to have to try and make good on these things. And it's all been sloganeering. It's all been bumper stickers. And they're going to find rapidly that they can't get all these promises across the line, or it's going to be the laws of unintended consequences all the way through. So
I don't have a problem with National winning. Let's be quite clear about that. That's democracy. I respect the process. I respect we are a very lucky country to be one of only 100 democracies around the world. I love our democracy, and we get the result that we do. What I'm incandescent with rage about is that they won with such vapid and venal policies. That list that you just came up with there, that's all lobbyist bullshit. Those are promises to lobbyists packaged so that they are sellable to bumper stickers. The 5-star food rate, that's big sugar. The fat foreign buyers lifting, well, that's the real estate industry. All of these are connected in some way. The clean car discount, what the real question over that is, who is putting the big dollars into National and ACT coffers? Because the only people who benefit from removing that clean car are the petrol companies. That's who benefits. Every one of, and this is what I think we're going to see with National, a tsunami of crony capitalism where donors suddenly get to write the policy as lobbyists for National. And that's why we talk about the unintended consequences. Oh, we'll get shitloads of them because they're not solutions to problems. They're solutions trying to find a problem, right? They're all written by people who've got a venal self-interest in that particular outcome. So National's going to ram through a whole bunch of this. When they can't get the revenue, they're going to start the privatization agenda, and you'll see public-private partnerships springing up everywhere. And none of these ideas are going to fucking fix the problems. That's what's just so insane, that people were so angry with Labour, so angry with post-COVID bitterness, so angry at the incremental nothings that Labour managed to produce. And every step of the way, Chippy managed to fuck up the campaign. There was so much of that people just went, I'm not voting. And, low voter turnout. It was lower than 2017 when Labour just scraped over the line. So a lower voter turnout than 2017. And people just would, in the end, didn't believe Labour. And where we've really made the losses is in the working classes. Middle class Labour people stuck with Labour. The working classes just didn't vote or they walked off. And you can understand their animosity and you can understand their frustration because they're economically getting screwed. Every time you go to the supermarket, you feel like you're getting mugged. Every time you fill up your car, you feel like you're getting mugged. No one's done any of the long-term funding to fix these fundamental problems. And so when Labour tried a half-assed attempt and was quite timid with it all, it fell over and bit us in the ass.
Yep. I think timidity is the thing, isn't it? Nothing to vote for. Give us something to vote for. And every time you heard Luxon saying, we have a different way of funding, and no fucking journalist went, oh, what is that way? What is that way? Oh, public-private partnerships. Oh, privatization. No one, not a single journalist, when he said that 1,000 times, like not a single time, did anyone go, could you expand on what that means when you say a different way of funding? And it's PPP and it's privatization. That's really all that's left. Sorry, Joe.
Do you know Chippy's best campaign speech was his concession speech? He rattled off some of the things that should have been screamed from the rooftops for the last
absolutely.
We built more houses than anybody. Yes. We kept 20,000 of you alive. We kept you in your jobs. We kept businesses afloat. All of that sort of stuff. But it was right at the end. Like, Luxon was so relentlessly on message with his, it's about low and middle income earners, tax relief. That's a lie. We know it's a lie. We've shown it's a lie. Eventually, the CTU came in and did what Labour never did, which was point at the fucking numbers and go, it does not compute. But it was all too late.
Yes.
It was all so late. I'd already voted by the time that came out. These guys are still campaigning like election day is the main event. And for a lot of people, that's too late.
Yeah. And I just think that they didn't, because they didn't, they were never prepared to front foot and argue things. I mean, Three Waters was about pipes, for Christ's sakes. How did that become an existential race war? Co-governance is a structure that National and ACT created. How did that become a secret radical agenda of the Maori elites to take over democracy? I mean, because they didn't have the courage to argue up front. The void was filled by AstroTurf dark money, and they created the agenda, and they sold people, the end of Western civilization as we know it. And I think if you weren't prepared to front foot things, then what are you standing for? And when Chippy ruled out the wealth tax, I just think a lot of people went, well, what's the point in voting if you're not going to tax the mega wealthy to pay for the infrastructure that we so desperately need, then what's the point? You know?
You've just mentioned something. Some people are going to think I'm going about OTT here, but you need to stick with me because you just mentioned the attack, for example, on the Māori elite. This nefarious, evil group of people that are controlling everything. Bear with me, baby birds. I'm not going as strong as it sounds when I say the very first sentence. But there is a really interesting
Jesus, hold on. Whoa, Pat,
bear
come
with
on.
me. There's a really interesting documentary on Netflix right now. It's only 58 minutes long. I suggest everybody watch this. It's called Ordinary Men, The Forgotten Holocaust. And it's a story about the ordinary men in Germany, the dentists, the bakers, the rubbishmen, everything, who got called into the private police, who were the people who started shooting and killing Jews on, after they dug their own death pits. They look at one particular police unit who were responsible for something like 38,000 Jewish murders and sending another 45,000 to the camps, right? So 70, 80,000 people by a bunch of bakers and chemists and plumbers and that kind of stuff. And the thing I was thinking about when I was watching this, and this is why I'm not going too far, people, I'm not saying these Nazis are now in control, but what I am wondering is on 1933 was kind of when Nazi Germany started. And sure, you know this better than me, so correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. But there would have been a day one. There would have been a day one prior to 1933 where people were sitting around the table having some ideas and questioning, we want to go in this direction. So it's not Nazi Germany. It's not Holocaust in the 40s Germany. It's 5, 10, 15, 18, 20 years before. Now, that kind of conversation has probably happened in countries all over the world throughout history, but it doesn't get to the end goal that they got to, which was Nazi Germany in 1942. And I just wonder, on day one, what were those conversations? What were being said around the table by 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people that eventually led to a point of the others being exterminated? There was a quote in that in the documentary. And it's a German, I think he's a sociologist or a historian, and he talks about how what happened with these police officers, they first of all, they made the businesses, they call it Aryanized, right? So more German. They made the Jewish businesses German. They made them whiter, you might say, Aryanized. It all happened out in the public. It wasn't a secret. It reinforced the division that was already there. And then they said this, they are them while we are the others. So they were able to pitch it as us and them, which then led into dehumanizing, which then led into concentration camps a long way down the path. And the reason I'm saying I'm not trying to be overly dramatic here, but the stuff we've been hearing in this election, whether it's from an official party who now wants to have a referendum on the treaty, or whether it's from a group like Julian Batchelor, is this day one? Or are we 3 years into a 13-year, what could be something horrific down the way? And does it mean anything, or is it all just politicking? Marty?
I don't think we're on that road yet, and I don't think that we've begun the first journeys to it. I think there are a whole bunch of unique factors that produced where Germany went. But I think that where we are is, how do we win back those people and provide a vision for New Zealand that they feel included with and they feel positive about? I think that's where the left need to go as a debate, not this fear of, oh shit, we're going on a road to fascism. I think that the right wing damage these fucking morons are about to conduct upon this country, if they get half their policy platform through, they're all dangerous enough without having to give it the name fascism. I like it's enough of a monster of what damage is going to be caused without us having to put everyone in brown shirts. And I think that if you look at the way, you're right in terms of the othering. If you look at the way Māori, Pacifica, prisoners, gangs, drug addicts, the disabled, beneficiaries, renters were all used to beat up on so that National could win. You're right. That kind of language is incredibly divisive, and it corrupts our democratic process. And let's be honest, guys, I don't think we've ever seen an election as racist as that. I don't think we've ever seen an election as spiteful and hateful as that. And I think that where the left needs to go now is how do we build hope? How do we reconnect? How do we pull that working class vote back? Because it's the working class vote that left us. We didn't do anything to materially make their worlds and lives better. Post-COVID, we all suffered. And this universal event, the sacrifice was shared equally in an unequal society, and it's created all sorts of ramifications that we're trying to grapple with right now. And our focus, I think, in the movement has to be not so much the end point of the far right, because you stare enough into the abyss for monsters, and monsters stare back into you, right? Paraphrasing, but I think where we need to go, you're right. This othering, it's all damaging stuff. But where we need to find hope right now is how do we reach out to fellow New Zealanders and bring them back across? They're not all right-wing evil lunatics. I would imagine most people who voted National Act on New Zealand First couldn't even fucking pinpoint a policy from theirs. They were just angry and hurt.
We've actually had an example of that in the chat tonight. Somebody saying that we don't even know New Zealand First tax policy. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And we've also had comments on the comparison to Nazis. That's not what we're saying at all. But I do want.
Can I have 10 seconds? Because I'm not actually suggesting that where we're at today will lead to 1940s Germany. I'm saying I think many places have started with a conversation that following a particular path could have got to somewhere quite horrific. Are we at the start of one of those conversations? Now, it might divert a very short way down and not go that path, but every time that something horrific happens in the world, 10 years after it began with a conversation. This referendum on the treaty, is that the beginning of a conversation that following? If you follow every worst path you can from that, and you take the worst option, then the worst option, could it go that way, and how do we make sure it doesn't? I just want to make sure people are clear. I'm not saying we're going to turn it to Nazi Germany. I'm not saying that. I think I said it clearly enough, but I want to reiterate in case people are unclear before you go on, Chewy. Sorry, mate. Off you go.
I also want to say on that, right? So we're getting laughed at that might be what we're talking about. It's not. But I also want to point out that whenever the right talk about the left, remember, we're all 2 steps away from being Mao, or we're all 2 steps away from Stalin. We're all communists, and we're going to throw people in re-education camps. So, I mean, when you're laughing at us for that, believe me, we're laughing at you for basically the same thing.
But I just want to add, Pat. I think that in terms of where this country could go in a step towards being a police state, oh shit, bro! I think we are very close to those sorts of boundaries. When you're talking about gang patch bans, and we're going to have this ridiculous and ludicrous situation, they're going to pass this in the first 100 days. So that means the first gang tangi in summer, all eyes will be on Christopher Luxon going, well, there's a gang funeral. You said you'd send in the police.
1,500 police officers, please.
The police are not going to want to go to a fucking funeral and drag people out and tear their patches off them, right? But the demand will be there for it. And let's also remember, New Zealand First has called for all domestic gangs to be designated terrorism groups so that the paramilitary police can be used. There will be a sudden upgrading of the police state, a whole bunch of new powers, all to be used against the bad guys, blah, blah, blah. And of course, it's always used against people who are not just the bad guys. It's used against anyone the state considers an enemy at the time. So I think in terms of, especially off the back of this referendum, look, if they are mad enough to push ahead with this, really that crazy, there will be a hikoi the size that we've never seen as Māoridom get up and go, we are not going to allow the Treaty of Waitangi to be redefined via majority votes by all you act right-wing people. We're not going to accept it at all. And when that frisson point gets there, yeah, I think the state's going to get pretty scary.
Yeah, all right. Sherry, you got anything else, brother?
I would say, look, if it does get to something about, David Seymour's Treaty of Waitangi 2.0. I can see that being a springbok tour level
absolutely,
sort of thing, right?
Yes.
And I think that's part of the thing where you see the seeds being planted for
Yes.
something quite bad. And that's sort of a thing where people are going to stand up against it. We saw it a little bit with Julian Batchelor's little traveling clown show.
Yes.
But that was one private citizen's sort of thing.
This is
when
a
it
state
gets into,
referendum.
Yeah. And I mean, Australia showed us as well. Don't put race relations up for a fucking referendum in a white majority country.
Right.
Like, you know exactly what you're doing. Exactly what you're doing.
What we're going to do shortly is we'll go and have a look at some stuff to do with the referendum in Australia and also what they're saying about that. But before we head off and let you go, Marty, we've just been talking about the election. Where to from here?
Well, we'll wait till the specials come in. Let's see if this government is ungovernable or workable. If Winston sticks to his guns and refuses to lift the foreign buyers ban, I think the second election is a real possibility. If they do manage it to sort their shit out and they get policy through, it will be very damaging. The left have got to take a long, hard look at themselves. I think one of the fundamental problems for Labour was that if they weren't prepared to tax the wealthy to actually fund the social infrastructure that a liberal progressive democracy requires, and because of the bloody 40-year neoliberal agenda that has stripped the state of capacity, we don't just need more doctors and nurses. We need more hospitals. And we don't just need more teachers. We need more schools. I mean, we're talking about a mass upgrade of the capacity of the state. The pandemic and COVID proved to us that you need a state that can actually do things. And because there hasn't been an argument for an increase in the capacity of the state beyond just more comms staff, because we haven't looked at more police stations, more police officers, like an actual, proper increase. If we're not going to do those things and we're not going to argue for them, then how are we materially making people's lives better?
Yeah.
The working classes are looking to us for solutions. And so we're going to have to work things out so that by the time we come to 2026, we have got policy in place and ready to implement in the first 100 days so that people believe in what we can do.
Yeah. Very true. All right, Marty, and you're on tomorrow night. Who's on with you guys tomorrow night?
We're doing the election breakdown. Damien Grant, Moana Jackson, and Matt McCann.
You know, Damien's going to be fucking abominable, right?
I have refused to talk to him all weekend. I have not. Although. You cannot imagine the anguish and the pain he feels of having his pure National Act hybrid polluted with New Zealand First DNA. It's driving him crazy.
I just wonder if you'll physically be able to see his smugness gland pulse.
Oh, you just. But Act was supposed to get 15%, and they were talking about 16, and they limped home with 9% because I think the electorate who were wanting to grudge fuck Labour and because they were angry and they went to Act to vote over Act, and then they realised, what is Act going to do? I'm not supporting that. I'm not supporting, and they and that vote collapsed. So their extremism hasn't really bought them much.
Yeah. All right, Bomber. We'll be
give
checking
him a
in tomorrow
shalom
night.
from me.
Yeah.
Be well, guys.
I wouldn't have mind being a fly on the wall after those shalom comments last week, Marty. We saw that, all of us. All the best, mate. All right. Huge thanks to Darby. A huge thanks to Sue. And a huge thanks to Sharon, who have purchased some merch. The latest way you can help support what we're doing and get on board is to have a look at our new merch. This month's drop has got the regular BHN gear, which everybody loves, and has also got our bottom feeder merch. If you are a bottom feeder or you'd like to support the bottom feeders, then head to bhnshop.nz to get your gear and go from there. All right. Now, there's been a bunch of chats and stuff as well. Let's say thanks to some of our super chats who have come in. We appreciate you guys. Alex, are you going to show for me? There we go. Click on again. I propose that the National and ACT Party should rename themselves to the Cooker Party. Cookouts. The Cookouts? What could you do then?
Cookatoos.
Cookatoos. Nice. I also think, ACT on 9%, they could well drop to 8 because those specials do absolutely favour the left. And we've
Did you hear his comment on that, though?
No.
One of the morning shows?
No, what did he
He
say?
said they favour the left because special votes are usually done by the disorganised, which I thought was great. You know, if you're not in your electorate, that is a special vote.
Yeah.
If you're not on the published roll, because maybe you're protecting your address, you're a special vote. So there's lots of reasons to be on a special vote.
And you have to be actually probably a special vote. People are more engaged because you have to do something to go and participate, as opposed to if you're just already down the road and going anyway. So yeah, no, that's pretty gross. And also Caleb, thank you for your super chat, $20, very generous. Pat, that angle of incremental decline relates a lot to the cyclical history theories, like the generational theory. It is a massive topic and depressing if true. Yeah, look, I knew that as soon as I started using that example, people would be going like, oh, look at this woke tard calling everyone Nazis. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And the one step that's been taken has got us where we're at. Doesn't mean it's going to go to that nth degree. No, of course it doesn't. But I'm sure 15 years before 1942, when they had their first step, they wouldn't have been thinking that either. Would have been a step, and it would have led to another step, which would have led to another step. And as I said about the referendum, if you take every worst case scenario from there, the worst step you could, who knows? Yeah,
I mean, it's something called the banality of evil, right? It's very easy to go, well, you know, the Nazis were monsters. They didn't go to fucking 100 straight away. And you know, when you look at people doing monstrous things before, after, now, doesn't have to be to that degree, but you know, they're real normal people that have sort of gone, I'm going to do this fucking off the chain thing. And, you know, it probably didn't happen out of nowhere.
And in that documentary, I don't know how old it is, because you would think that the lawyer who tried some of these Nazis at Nuremberg would probably be well past by now. He is speaking. One of the lawyers is speaking in this documentary. He might be 103, or he might be 80, and it might be from 20 years ago. I'm not sure. However, he was interviewed by CNN, and he was asked by CNN about these. How did he relate to these pure evil men? And he said, I don't think they were pure evil. And the guys from CNN went, well, what do you mean? They murdered all these people. They killed all these people. And he just went, well, were the guys who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima evil? Because they murdered and killed a whole bunch of people as well. Outside, they were war crimes. There's no question that Hiroshima was a war crime. But they're on our side. So our side can't be evil. So this relates, I guess, a little bit to this conversation that if you're speaking about sides in politics, those on your side might seem right. Remember, we did this the other day about bias. The reason that you may disagree with me saying something fair, which is supporting the left, is because you're supporting the right. So I'm not saying something that resonates with you or that you agree with. So you think I'm wrong. I may not be wrong. It might just be different. My side see things different from your side. I don't like using those words sides because I don't think we have to be split like we are. But the guys who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, Americans think of them as heroes. The people who killed all the Jews, America thinks of them as evil. So many thousands, millions, tens of millions of people died. But when they're on your side, they're good and proper. When they're on the other side, they're evil, Joey.
Oh, yeah. And things can change over time as well. Like, and it's based on the time you're in. Like this strategic bombing campaign of World War II, you know, you would not be able to get away with that these days. Of like, well, you know, we can't quite hit the factory, so we'll just hit the suburb that the factory's in because that's where all the workers live.
Yeah.
You know, that's a conversation that happened and it was the legitimate tactic of the war, but you could not do that today.
Well, let's just relate it to something today. The cognitive dissonance that must go on in someone's head who goes, Israel blowing up apartments with civilians inside them is just. The cognitive dissonance that you have to go through to think that is mind-blowing. To go, Hamas did these things to these innocent people and killed them all and kidnapped them. So therefore, we're going to go kill all these innocent people who are in buildings in Gaza. the cognitive dissonance one has to go through to get there. But that's because if you're someone who believes that Israel is, God's land and it's the one you support, then blowing up a building seems to be okay and just. Yet Hamas, Palestinians perhaps, I won't paint everyone with the same brush, who support Hamas, going into occupied territory and pulling out families and killing them, those innocents, that's evil. When we kill innocents, that's fine. It's just, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And if people are wondering where we sat, we said pretty clearly last week, I feel more of a calling towards the cause of Palestinians being shut in that area with the big walls up around them, but we reject wholeheartedly the actions of Hamas. Just in case anyone wanted to know.
Hamas can get fucked. The
Yep.
IDF can get fucked.
Yep.
And Benjamin Netanyahu's government can get fucked. They're all just shitty.
Yep.
Before we crack on, can I address something that came up in the chat? Because this is just great.
Cool.
We have had probably someone that is maybe not a fan of our position, but he sat here for the whole show so far. So I do want to highlight, this is about Winston. Wrong. He's in favor of lower taxes. He followed that up with a comment saying, you don't even know their policy. Well, let's have a wee look, shall we?
Winston didn't know their policy either when he got called out for GST or fresh fruit and veggies. So I think
we're talking about it now. Who knows? There's maybe an intern watching ready to delete this line by line. Tax reforms in the next term of Parliament. New Zealand First will legislate to make the lowest tax bracket of income tax-free no later than the 1st of April 2027, providing an extra $28.27 a week for workers. Okay, that sounds fair.
Okay.
New Zealand First will adjust tax brackets for inflation starting April 1st, 2024, with the first adjustment taking place in 2027 and every 3 years thereafter. New Zealand First will get more private homes built for renters by reinstating interest tax deductibility. Dubious. New Zealand First will secure a select committee inquiry into GST of basic fresh foods. We must examine if this would deliver real benefits for the taxpayer before legislating for it. We would want to ensure savings to get consumers, savings get to consumers before we support legislation. There it is. That's his tax policy. There's no tax cuts there.
Yeah, true.
Like there's some fiddling around the edges, but that does not look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest. To my untrained eye, most of that looks okay. I'm sure there's experts there that would shed more light on that, but that does not sound like National's tax cut policy. It doesn't sound like X tax cut policy, which they walked back. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of walking back, let's go have a look at David Seymour being challenged by Ryan Bridge on the 15,000 public servants who are going to lose their jobs. Now, remember, in fairness, it was Nicola Willis who said, we'll start cutting before Christmas. I think that's getting attributed a little bit to ACT. It was actually Nicola Willis who talked about getting rid of some of these public servants by Christmas. But Ryan Bridge talks to Semour. There's actually two clips I'm going to play from this. I'm going to do them in reverse order because the other one's about the treaty referendum, which we'll get into for a little bit. So this is Ryan Bridge challenging, not challenging, just asking, but it comes across as a challenge because politicians say things in an election campaign that they'll never do. And this this feels like it's a bit of a cornerstone legislative change, a policy that ACT want. But when Ryan Bridge uses some of the same terminology that David Seymour uses, he says things like, well, I don't know if that rhetoric's, so helpful here. Like that was what he's been using right the way through the election campaign. So let's have a listen to what he had to say about the 15,000 public servants that are going to need to pack their bags.
David, should the 15,000 public servants that you spoke about in the election campaign be packing their bags?
Well, no. I mean, there's no suggestion that people are going to, lose their job tomorrow. What is going to happen is that
Didn't you say by Christmas you'd be firing people?
What I've said is that a lot of people have contracts where they have 6 months redundancy, where actually, you're going to take some time. We're not just going to randomly get rid of people. What we're involved in is saying, how is it possible that we've got 30% more people in the core public service? But worse results.
So these 15,000 people who were a bit nervous during the election, probably voting Green in Wellington, I imagine. How long do they have? How long? Give them a time frame for when they'll all be fired.
Well, I think your rhetoric's not that helpful. I think what
Whoa!
Get him,
did you hear
Chloe.
that? But
Yep.
did you hear that? David Seymour, of all people, saying your rhetoric is not that helpful. David Seymour
Is rhetoric.
saying your rhetoric, the person who's used more rhetoric than anybody else through this election cycle, David Seymour, saying your rhetoric is not helpful. And I think you'll find Ryan Bridge then points out that this is actually your rhetoric from the campaign, Mr. Seymour.
Give them a time frame for when they'll all be fired.
Well, I think your rhetoric's not that helpful. I think what you got to point.
That's your rhetoric from the campaign.
I think what you got to point.
We will get rid of them, I think.
Well, what we
Oh,
need to
comrade
get to
Ryan, get him.
And first of all, let's just be really clear. When we talk about the public service, we're not talking about nurses. We're not talking about teachers. We're not talking about police. We're talking about 60,000 odd bureaucrats, mainly in Wellington, which is up from 47,000 just 6 years ago. Now, we've got 30% more people in the core public service, 30,000 more bureaucrats, although 30%, more bureaucrats, as many people would say. But do we have more kids at school? Are they learning more? Are the roads better? None of that's happened.
All right.
So we're going to have to get more efficiency because every household and business is doing it. Government is going to have to tighten its belt too.
We have to leave it there, guys.
The thing is, right, and this is the thing I just want to ask David Seymour and all these other people, how do you think fewer people in the back rooms of the Ministry of Education is going to provide better outcomes in the front room, i.e. the classrooms in the Ministry of Education? Because that's what they're saying. We're going to get rid of a whole bunch of people in the back rooms. Ministry of Education. Why do you think that getting rid of people in the Department of Conservation, I struggle with that because of a name of another podcast, is going to help having fewer people in the Department of Conservation in the back room, in the offices, is going to help with the outcomes of the front room of the Department of Conservation? How? Because they've never spelt it out, Chewy.
No, never. Kiwi Rascal here is right. My mood is Chloe. Her face through that whole thing every time she needs to sit next to Seymour. Ugh. Yeah.
But
no, like,
did it feel like
this...
to you at any level that he was backtracking a little bit? He certainly wasn't as hardcore. Day one, the first weekday, it was before 7 a.m, Monday after the election. There was no way he was being as hardcore on these 15,000 that he was for the previous 6 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, and I bet that happened when the first results came in and went, oh, shit.
I'm going to be held accountable
back
now.
up a lot of the things that I've been saying. Oh, fuck. And like... They're doing, like, we're talking about the Department of Education, right? They're all going, the curriculum's fucked and we need to redo the whole thing. Who does that if you've sacked everyone?
Yep.
They haven't, like, we need to change this. We need to change that. There need to be big changes in Waka Kotahi. We like, again, sorry, to get back to the EV thing again, right? But they're talking about redoing road user charges, which drastically, it needs to be done. Like, even the most rabid EV aficionado, God, thanks, $5 word, says that road user charges need to come in. EVs have had a free ride on that to help stoke the uptake, but they know it won't last forever. What an excellent opportunity to completely redo road user charges. And one suggestion I saw was that you take the tax out of petrol completely,
Right.
and get all vehicles on road user charges. That'd be a massive undertaking. It'd be the right one, in my point of view. But you need people, you need policy wonks to come in there and come up with that policy and close all the loopholes and make sure it fucking works. They're the back office people.
Yeah.
Don't leave it to the politicians who think they know what to do. Leave it to the people that do it. And that's going to be the same in education. It's going to be the same in health. I'm not saying that there's not dead wood there. I'm just saying when they're coming up with such huge numbers out of their jobs before Christmas, or maybe not, because I have to follow through now. But yeah, I'm what we've been saying for a month now. Simple solutions to complex problems. Never goes well.
Yeah, never ever. All right, we are going to do one more thing, but before we do that, Peter's super chat. Thank you for your super chat, Peter. We appreciate that. Left still beat right by 2-1 in Dunedin, so it's good to live in a community that shares my views. I tell you what, looking at the map of New Zealand, I don't know if you've done this yet, Shelley, but it is somewhat terrifying if you're a person on the left. There's the map of New Zealand, this one here, right? And what this shows is Dunedin down here and Otago. Oh, I've got to take away the super chat for a sec. Sorry, Peter. Look at this. There's the South Island, and there we are. But look where we are. Little shot. So everyone who's left in the South Island, who's left in the South Island, we're all going to be moving to Otago because there's your map. What do you think about that, eh? A little
People's Republic of Otago.
A little beacon of hope. Little tiny beacon of hope down in Otago of red. Obviously, there are suburbs within cities like that, but
the Otipoti People's Republic.
come join us. We'll be all right. All right. Hey, let's just. We do want to talk about this, and depending how long we stay from here, I haven't given it enough time. We never do, but I want to have a look at The Voice in Australia because we haven't really touched on this at all. And I've had lots of people saying to me, what's it all about? I found this from The Guardian, a little 2-minute explanation of The Voice. This was prior to The Voice. Right, so
this is excellent.
Let me just give this to you in 2 minutes so everybody knows what we're talking about. And we're not actually talking in depth about The Voice because we're going to go from this and talk about ACT wanting to hold a referendum on the treaty.
Australians will soon vote in a referendum on whether to establish an Indigenous voice to Parliament. All Australians will be able to vote yes or no on October the 14th. The successful yes vote would recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Australia's constitution and lead to the creation of an Indigenous body to advise the government and Parliament on laws and policies affecting Indigenous people.
Sound familiar, New Zealanders? Like the context of it sound a little bit familiar? It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but familiar?
First Nations people in Australia have faced a long and painful history of colonisation and dispossession. Compared with the rest of the Australian population, Indigenous people often experience the worst outcomes in health, employment, education and incarceration rates. Efforts to close the gap between Indigenous Australians and the rest of the country have consistently failed, and supporters of The Voice say it will improve the lives of First Nations peoples. Australia's Labor government and other Indigenous groups are leading the campaign to establish The Voice. They want The Voice written into the Constitution so it can't be abolished when the government changes, as has happened with other advisory groups in the past. The federal opposition Liberal Party is opposed to establishing the body, saying it wouldn't alleviate the issues facing First Nations communities.
Okay, it wouldn't alleviate facing First Nation. It's just like, it's not going to do anything. Nothing to help these people.
They also claim it could divide the nation.
Oh, it could bring division. Notice how the right so often talks about division whilst they're dividing. Has anyone else picked up on that? How they talk about we need to be together. This is what I remember from working at ZB, a bastion of white middle class talkback. When people say we need to be together, we need to stop division, what they're saying is you need to be like me. That's how we get together. You need to be like me, and then we can be together. So it's evident within migrants to a country that the locals, normally the white locals, will say, hey, people from Japan, people from China, people from South America, be like us. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's 3 ways you can become together. They can become like us, you can become like them, or together we can grow into something else. Mm-hmm. And obviously that together we can grow into something else is what's defined, I guess, as a multicultural country. But so often when people talk about division, it's like when people talk about balance. Bring balance to news. What they're saying is say what I want you to hear. When those on the right say stop the division, what they're saying is be like us. And it's not how the world goes. Because sure as fuck, those people 150 years ago coming over here weren't being like the indigenous people. They weren't being like the people who were already there. They brought their own culture with them, and they brought their own thoughts with them, and they wanted to live like that. So why should we expect anything from any migrant right now? And finally on this, it is a bandwagon of mine, finally on this, if you want someone to be a part of your community, whether it's a Indigenous New Zealander, whether it's a migrant to the country, whether you are the Indigenous community and it's European New Zealanders or whatever, what you do is you open your door and you let them come to you. You invite them in. You don't shout at them metaphorically from across the road and you say, be like us, and slam your front door. You bring them into community. Mm-hmm. And when I hear people like this saying, it'll bring division, the right in Australia, what they're saying is, we're creating division and this will add to it anyway. It's ludicrous. Before I push play, Chewy, do you want to pick up on any of that?
So we see here a lot of talk about racism and division and things going backwards, or maybe things aren't going forwards quick enough. And it's terrible, bad, terrible. Then we get Australia's attempt at doing something. And you go, oh shit. Oh fuck, that's really bad. You know, like I think it was up until the 1950s or 1960s or something, Aboriginal people were classed as fauna over there. Like it is just through a lens that is just a bizarro. Like it's just mad. And to see, you know, like what we were talking about, right? Aussies are normal people.
Yep.
Just doing their day to day. They're not
ordinary people.
Evil.
Yep.
But here they decided that no, we don't want to let Aboriginal people that have been here for 40,000 years have any say in our form of government. That's crazy.
So, spoiler alert, Chewy's already given out the results if you weren't quite aware of that. But let's just get to the end of this definition of what the voice is.
Some Indigenous people and groups also oppose the voice. They're pushing for a treaty to set out the terms of their relationship with the Australian government. There's a lot of information out there about the voice. It can be confusing and hard to work out what's going on. The official yes and no pamphlets have been published online by the Australian Electoral Commission, but it's important to know they haven't been fact-checked by an independent source. This is an important vote, and it's vital we take the time to consider our vote and what it will mean for the future of the country. So, long story short, yes would mean, First Nations, Indigenous people, Aborigines would be officially kind of a part of the government process for making decisions, would consult to the government would seek their advice on it, I don't know if it's exactly the same as New Zealand, but you can hear some similarities going on there. 60% said nah. 60% of Australians that voted, nah, we don't want that. And it didn't pass. Now, speaking of that...
How hurtful. You're an Aboriginal person in Australia. How hurtful would that be?
Yeah.
The people that you live with, work with, like Jesus.
So New Zealanders may have an opportunity to have their say. I guess I'm just using terminology that those who are proposing this are saying, to have a referendum on the treaty, whatever the fuck that means. And there was an interaction between Ryan Bridge and David Seymour and Chloe Swarbrick about it this morning. Chewy, earlier when you talked about if this referendum went through, you could imagine scenes like from 1981, scenes from the Springbok tour. When you think about that, I think about people in motorbike helmets, and I think about police officers with batons. That's a violent situation. Over the weekend, James Shaw made some comments about this, and that's the point where we start this conversation between Ryan Bridge and Chloe Swarbrick.
Chloe, let's talk about this referendum on the treaty principles that David is proposing. Your leader, James Shaw, has said that this could lead to violence. It could lead to social unrest. Do you agree with him?
I mean, we've discussed this on the couch before, right, on the fact that putting forward a kind of quite reductive binary on ultimately what is a sophisticated and quite complex constitutional conversation in question can ultimately result in triggering some quite untoward rhetoric. So I do think, and we've said this before as well in discussion on this couch, that there is the need to have a discussion about our constitutional future and our past, but I don't think that this referendum proposal is the right way to do it.
David, James Shaw says this could lead to violence. John Tamahere from the Māori Party says it could lead to cities being shut down, widespread civil unrest, and the closing down of major centres in New Zealand.
Now, just before, I'm not going to stop this playing. Okay, keep going, but Chewy, you described it as you could imagine it being 1981 Springbok tour type protests. When Ryan Bridge says the words that John Tamahere said, that's what happened in 1981. So you might be spot on. Now, is that good, bad, or indifferent? I don't know, but more than one person are thinking this is not going to be good for New Zealand. Of course, Rimmer responds by saying,
well, I mean, you know, you expect it from John Tamahere. He is unhinged and irresponsible in just about everything that he does. Jesus. I was really surprised by James Shaw to lose an election and then say, if the democratic will of the people is honoured, there will be violence. That's the sort of thing that I expect from fringe lunatic politicians, not from James Shaw, who's just had a really good result, who's generally regarded as a respectable person. So for him to be making that sort of veiled threat, actually saying that violence is justified if you disagree with a political outcome,
not what James was
that's
saying.
absolutely outrageous. It's exactly what he said. It's unforgivable in my view, and I think James Shaw should retract that and say it's never acceptable to have violence. We will participate in a healthy, rational discussion about our constitutional future, rather than make the kind of, not quite threats, but the kind of rhetoric that he's engaging in. Really astonished to hear that from James Shaw.
No, I just really need to be clear that James was not making any form of veiled threats, and to imply that is actually rather irresponsible. What he was saying is that if you look at the trajectory of those kinds of conversations and the type of rhetoric that tends to come forward from an oversimplified binary, which does divide people, then you need to look at the consequences that have occurred over the course of history.
Well, Australia's just had a very similar referendum. Now, I'm not aware that Australia's in a great deal of unrest.
I mean, you can talk to people on the ground and you'll hear that there was a huge amount of racism that came out as a result of that, and a huge amount of misunderstanding as well.
I suppose the question is, should you not do something? Should you not use a function of democracy just because
I absolutely think that we should use functions of democracy. What I'm saying is that the way to achieve that is not through a reductive binary referendum, which is presupposing that there's only two ways that this conversation can play out.
Well, I just think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Right.
James Shaw should be in favour of rational debate, not saying...
And he is. The point remains that we can have these conversations in a way that doesn't presuppose that there's a binary outcome.
Boom. All hail the Queen. I think that's where we finish off.
David, look at me, you piece of shit.
Listen.
Bad David.
Chewy, you said it so well earlier that, and this is evidence, that race relations, especially in a white country, primarily Pākehā country,
you can't do it.
Two things, cannot be decided by referendum. Referendum and will of the people is not always the correct thing to do. Sometimes the minor position is the correct thing to do. And finally, and always, I'll come back to this, the treaty is a contract between two parties, Māori and the Crown. It doesn't actually matter what Billy Bob wants from Timaru.
No.
He's not part of the contract. The contract is between Māori and the Crown. And I'll tell you what, if they go forward with this, I won't actually try and dramatise it up by saying violence or anything, but it won't go anywhere because there's no way any High Court will change or uphold or allow a contractual agreement between two parties to be changed by a third party. So it's actually a complete dog whistle. It's a waste of time. It will cause massive amounts of problems and division. These guys don't want to cause division. This will cause division. And then the High Court will strike it down if anything tries to get passed, because a third party can't change the rules for a contract between two other parties. chewy.
We've already had a protest that shut down a major city. Absolutely paralysed the middle of Wellington.
Yep.
And what we learned from that is that these guys will talk to them or pander to them afterwards. So
right.
for him to pearl clutch about people going, well, maybe we have to take direct action. Like, a lot of them voted for him. You know, I think this is very true. If Seymour takes away our democratic voice, we use our democratic hands. I like that. I don't know if that's an original slogan or whether you've heard it somewhere. That is going in the vault. I love that.
And thank you for the $5 super chat. Very generous. We appreciate it greatly.
Absolutely.
If Seymour takes away our democratic voice, we use our democratic hands. I'd like some expansion on that. What does that mean? JC, speaking of super chats, thanks for the super sticker. And another one from JC. Create the divide, then offer to fix it. Classic right-wing move. We need to get ahead of this shit, increase awareness to this classic scam. It's also the idea, and Jon Stewart, when he used to run The Daily Show, used to point this out constantly and perfectly. He'd look at Fox News, and in the morning show, pardon me, the morning show, Fox and Friends, they'd make a report about an issue. And then in the afternoon show, they'd say, some outlets are reporting that, and the outlet was Fox News earlier. So they would make a narrative in the morning that they would then report on in the afternoon that some outlets are saying. Some news outlets are reporting that, and it was them. So what happens in this situation is some people are creating this narrative that this has to happen and this is wrong, and then they create the division, and then they say, well, we can solve the division that we've created by having referendum. So they are the cause, and then they offer to be the solution. It's a clever but disgusting trick, Chewy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's this sort of stuff that is going to be our all-consuming job over the next 3 years. Like, if there's one thing that I hate saying that out loud as well. Like, if Luxon is going to be like Key, one of the things that Key was at least responsive to was public opinion and public blowback. So, you know, he hopefully won't want to seem like the bad guy. I question whether he's going to be like that because of how much he stuck to his guns in the run up to the election. And some of that might be a tactic. You know, you can't get off message, and he was very good at staying on message. But will that change when he's the Prime Minister that's got to front a stand-up?
And that same question can be asked about, about the tax cuts. I mean, they were challenged several times by reporters saying, if you can't get through the foreign buyers ban, what will you do then? And every time, whether it was Luxon or Nicola Willis, was like, we are giving the tax cuts. It's a guarantee. I will quit rather than do it. So that therefore means if they can't get those things through, as we've been warning of all the way through, the only other way you get money is either to borrow it or to cut. And it's probably a combination of them both. Maybe they borrow more. Maybe they sell off, or I guess sell off state assets to give tax cuts to wealthy landlords. Goodbye, Air New Zealand. Hello, landlord being able to claim their tax back. So who knows? Or the disabled, as we've already pointed out. The disabled is going to be down $2 billion over the next 4 years. Coincidentally, the exact amount that's been budgeted for tax cuts for landlords. Coincidentally.
Yeah, like I think there needs to be a few issues that need to be a red line for people that if they come anywhere near it, you've got to fight for it. Look at the French model. If they look at selling off these public houses that have just been built, if they look at privatizing our water, if they look at doing the stupid fucking referendum on our founding document, these need to be red lines where people decide, wow, it's not enough for me to have a moan on Facebook or come and listen to two beardy guys talk about how it's time to, what did I say the other day from Killer Mike? Plot, plan, strategize, organize, mobilize.
That's next month's t-shirt, those 3 words. That's next month's t-shirt. Okay? So we'll do that. And then the month after that, it'll be something like have yourself a very beardy Christmas. BHN. That'll be a month after. Hey, if you're interested, Chewy, if you want to have a look in the chats to see if there's anything else you want to wrap up with, we're going to go. But before we go, let me just remind you all that one of the ways you can support us is to be a patron, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. The other way is to tell people about us. Great numbers in the chat tonight. I'm actually quite enjoying looking up at Twitch because I never used to use Twitch. It'd always be like one person in Twitch every single night. And since we got kicked off of YouTube last week, there's now a little community. And Twitch, Chewy, a little community over there, not as big as it was last week because we're on YouTube again, but a little community on Twitch. That's nice to see. So share us around, talk about us. Make sure you go and check out our audio podcast, #BHN and Apple Podcasts in particular. We want to stay in that top 3 of news commentary podcasts. So when we enter the podcast awards, we can go.
Oh, is that the first mention of that, Pat?
The podcast awards?
Yeah, I don't think you've mentioned that to our people.
When we enter that this time, I don't normally enter them because they're dominated by the mainstream media, and the My FM breakfast team wins entertainment podcast of the year. One of the guys from Radio New Zealand said one year, I didn't know we even made a podcast because it's just a highlights package and he won an award for it. So I don't normally enter them, but I'm like, dude, we've been ahead of Leighton Smith and Duncan Garner some weeks in the charts. So if that's the mainstream media, then let's give it a crack this year and see what happens. So lots of ways you can support us. One of the ways for this month, obviously, is by getting involved with our merch. Now, yes, I know that looks very yellow, but like I said, if you get into bhnshop.nz and have a look in the actual things there, that's the tan t-shirt there. You can see that's the actual proper color. And we're selling bottom feeder t-shirts for the next 3 weeks. And we're selling those because of Luxon's infamous line about, the bottom feeders. I'm happy to consider myself a bottom feeder. If you are as well, get yourself a bottom feeder t-shirt or hoodie. Or if you want to support us bottom feeders, you can get yourself a bottom feeder hoodie or t-shirt. You can also, of course, get regular BHN merch, which is there as well. And that's at bhnshop.nz. Kooky Nick, thank you for the super chat, $2 super chat, reminding us all to hit that like. That's another way you can support us. Hitting that like helps the algorithms on YouTube or whatever platform you're watching us on, and helps to alert other people, drops us in the algorithm. Actually, on Saturday night, it was interesting hearing from people who say, you came across my algorithm and we picked you up and we like you. So when you guys share us around, when you like and subscribe, that actually tells YouTube that these people are doing things, or it tells Twitter that these people are doing things and maybe others might be interested in them, and it helps share us around. So there's lots of ways you can support us. Joey, anything we particularly want to mention from the chat?
No, I think. No, I've done that one. No, I am all good.
All right, team. It's been fabulous to see you all tonight. We're with you. Don't panic. We'll feed your baby birds. It's okay for the time being. Remember, most of us will not see a massive impact from this new incoming government. The most vulnerable will be worse off. So we need to be here for them as well. So look around you, look for those people who are more vulnerable than you, look one step down the ladder to help someone else, keep an eye on them, and we'll get through this. Sounds like it's like a 3-week thing, but just look after one another. Be kind to one another, people. Be kind. I think that's one of the things that people hate. What did Bomber say? Hate fuck on Labour? Is that what he said? Something like that? But the truth is, one of the messages that was coming out for a long portion of the last term was being kind to one another. So I think it. Be kind to one another, and we will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Be safe, be well. We'll catch you then. Hooroo.
Cheers, man.